One thing that we do not discuss enough with the public is that only 20% of breast cancer is inherited. 80% is environmental. The number one thing that I would choose, hands down, is to get rid of inflammation. With dense breast tissue, look at everything that you can fix that is modifiable. Insulin is key to whether you get breast cancer or not.
This is the Transformational Life Consulting Podcast with Deepa Grandin, MD, where Christians like you get the practical support and tools you need to build your spiritual, mental, and physical well-being, and to guide you on your journey to health and wholeness based on evidence-based science and God's Word. I am your host, Dr. Deepa Grandin. Welcome to the Time to Transform podcast. If you're new here, we are so happy you joined us. We hope our podcast helps you on your faith and wellness journey. As an immunologist, I have always been fascinated by the interplay between immune function and cancer outcomes. Also, being a practicing lifestyle medicine physician, there is tons of evidence to prove that immune function is strongly influenced by lifestyle behavior, which in turn can influence cancer severity and response to treatment. So, cancer is the second leading cause of death worldwide and represents a growing major public health problem. So, according to data collected in 2022, an estimated 20 million cancer cases were newly diagnosed, and 9.7 million people died from the disease worldwide. Now, breast cancer specifically is the most commonly diagnosed cancer in the world, followed by lung cancer. The American Institute for Cancer Research and the American Cancer Society regularly publish cancer prevention recommendations in order to decrease the risk of developing cancer. So I'm going to list some of the more recent recommendations. So, for instance, maintaining a healthy body weight, meeting physical activity guidelines, eating a colorful variety of vegetables, fruits, plenty of whole grains, limiting red and processed meats, fast food, and other highly processed foods, avoiding or limiting sugar-sweetened beverages, avoiding or limiting alcohol consumption to 1 drink or fewer per day, and avoiding cigarette smoking. Today, to help us delve further into this really important topic, since most of our podcasts are focused on lifestyle and how to prevent diseases, today our focus is how can lifestyle and our day-to-day habits help us prevent breast cancer. So we have an amazing physician, Dr. Pamela Smith. Dr. Smith spent her first 20 years of practice as an emergency room physician in a level 1 trauma center with the Detroit Medical Center, and then 29 years as a functional personalized medicine specialist. She is internationally known speaker and author. She holds a master's degree in public health with specialization in toxicology, along with a master's degree in metabolic and nutritional medicine. Dr. Smith is in private practice, and she is the senior partner for the Center for Precision Medicine with offices in Michigan and Florida. She has been featured on CNN, PBS, and many other television networks. She has been interviewed in numerous consumer magazines and has hosted 2 of her own radio shows. Dr. Smith was one of the featured physicians on the PBS series, The Embrace of Aging, as well as the online medical series, Awakening from Alzheimer's and Regain Your Brain. Dr. Smith is the co-director of the Personalized Medicine Certification at the Morsini College of Medicine, University of South Florida. She is the author of 14 best-selling books. Her newest book, How to Prevent Breast Cancer Before and After, has just been released. Thank you, Dr. Smith, so much for taking the time to share your knowledge and expertise on breast cancer prevention. Please, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you like to do outside of medicine? And what got you to transition from being an emergency room physician to functional personalized medicine specialist?
Oh, thank you very much. Truly, it's been an interesting journey. This is my 47th year of practice. I will be 71 in July. And honestly, I love what I do, so I can't ever see stopping. It is truly fun. I loved being an ER physician in a level one trauma center until one day I could not sleep. And so I literally went to 11 doctors, and they all told me the same thing: take a sleeping pill.
Um,
I thought, this is crazy. I've always been able to sleep. So why would I all of a sudden not be able to? I was very lucky. I was invited to a medical conference where the answer was there. There it was. Women without progesterone frequently have insomnia. I did the first saliva test in the Midwest, and I had no progesterone at all. We're going to talk more about why that would be an issue. I started taking progesterone compounded, and I slept like a baby ever since. And then I realized there was really more to medicine. I loved being acute care, but I really love looking at the cause of the problem and not just treating symptoms, which is what a personalized functional medicine approach is.
Yeah, that's great. I think your story is very similar to a lot of the lifestyle functional medicine physicians. When you realize the power of what we do on a day-to-day basis and how much it can prevent life-threatening chronic diseases, you just become a believer and it's hard not to pursue that. So that makes total sense. Thanks for sharing. So let's start with some basics. What is cancer prevention and why does it matter?
Well, most people honestly make cancer cells, probably 5 or 6 times in their lifetime. The question is, you're an immunologist, how do you kill off the cancer cells? We do know there's three things that absolutely positively feed them: sugar, stress, and toxins. So, looking at sugar, stress, and toxins is certainly a great place to start when we look at keeping the body healthy. But the other thing, honestly, is keeping the gut healthy. 70% of the immune system is in the GI tract, the gut. And so, having that healthy is also just as important.
Okay, that's great. So, what common genes, lifestyle, and environmental factors can work together to increase or decrease our risk of getting cancer?
Well, certainly toxins play a very, very big role, particularly when it comes to breast cancer. Things like BPA, which is an endocrine disruptor, meaning it can change how hormones function in the body, is a big one that has been shown to increase the risk of breast cancer. The trouble, BPAs are everywhere, like here in plastic. They are all over the place, and so honestly, I quit testing for BPAs 5 years ago, even in someone who has a degree in toxicology, because I couldn't get rid of it until now. And we just published an article, myself and my partner, Dr. Paul Savage, on TPE, therapeutic plasma exchange. Now we can actually get rid of toxins in the body like BPAs, 92 to 100%. So it's very, very exciting. The article just came out in the medical literature yesterday. So we now have much more to offer patients when it comes to getting rid of toxins.
Yeah. And then how about genes, lifestyle? What would you say?
Well, genes is always an interesting question. So there's a couple of ways to look at that, and it's a great question. One is, are you a poor methylator? I am. I actually wrote this book, How to Prevent Breast Cancer and How to Prevent a Reoccurrence, literally because I have breast cancer on both sides of my family. I have a grandmother I never even met, a great woman apparently, but didn't get to meet her. Had a cousin on that side of the family, which is my Armenian side. She passed away at 51, but she had another risk factor. She never had children. On my other side of the family, I had an aunt who had it. She survived, an aunt who passed away from breast cancer, and a cousin who's now currently being treated. But part of that is because, certainly on the Armenian side of my family, I am a poor methylator. I inherited a gene where I don't methylate well. What does that mean? Methylation is a CH3 group, and you're supposed to put it where it belongs in the body. But one half of the people in the entire world inherit a gene where they don't methylate appropriately. The great news is we can test this and we can fix it in 100% of people. So fortunately, I found that out 37 years ago that I was a poor methylator and have been taking methylated vitamins for 37 years. Everybody on the podcast today can have it measured in three ways. One, they can look at estrogen breakdown. That's a first morning urine. Number two, they could have their primary care doctor measure their homocysteine level, and that will tell us my homocysteine was high. That's part of the pathway. Or if you see a functional medicine doctor, you can have an entire methylation test done where we look at the whole entire pathway, and this is now available worldwide.
Okay, that's good to know. And are there, besides the methylated vitamins, are there any lifestyle practices that can help?
Yes, there are. And a lot of that has to do with the other side of whether you inherit a gene or not. Everybody gets excited that, my mother had breast cancer, my sister had breast cancer. They get excited if they have a BRCA gene, etc. But I think one thing that we do not discuss enough with the public is that only 20% of breast cancer is inherited. 20%. 80% is environmental. So the number one thing that I would choose, hands down, is to get rid of inflammation. Inflammation causes most disease, but when it comes to breast cancer, it's definitely an inflammatory disease process.
Okay. Um, so, what is breast cancer screening and what is the goal of screening and who should undergo it?
Really, everybody should have an evaluation of what happens in their breast tissue. There's a lot of discussion still in the medical literature if that should start at 40 or 45. It's getting hard now because worldwide we are seeing breast cancer in younger women, even in women who are 25 years of age. And certainly, mammography is the gold standard, quote unquote, of looking at it. But we also have ultrasound and we have thermogram. That's a heat wave study. It's a very unusual study that you have done. You actually stand there with no clothing on from the waist up, and they look at the heat waves. And then probably the ultimate study is MRI. MRI can project out because it looks at tiny little substances about 3 years out as to the breast cancer risk. Of course, everybody's not going to have MRI, but if you have a really bad family history or there's a questionable area, that would certainly be the ultimate study to have.
And at what age should women start doing the screening?
A lot of it depends on your family history and your risk factors. So there's non-modifiable risk factors, meaning ones you cannot change, and there's modifiable ones that you can fix. And you mentioned diet. Diet is huge. People always say, what should you eat? And Mediterranean diet is anti-inflammatory. So you want to eat things that are not inflammatory. Sugar creates inflammation in the body. That's my personal hard one. I think I've gotten the rest of the modifiable risk factors are gone, but sugar is still hard when I'm stressed. I
Yeah.
reach for sugar. I think a lot of women do. It's not really a good thing to do.
Yeah.
So we try and get rid of the things that we can fix. One that is really easy, you also mentioned, is alcohol. And it may not be a popular subject, but
Yeah.
there's now many studies showing that alcohol increases estrogen in the body, so the hormones become out of balance. And in increasing estrogen, it's also liquid sugar. And so it's another risk factor. The American Cancer Society does now recommend on their website that if you have breast cancer on both sides of your family, you should not drink alcohol. I don't. I am what we lovingly call a teetotaler. I do not drink any alcohol at all because that's one you can fix. For everybody else, if you drink more than one glass of wine, for example, a day, does that increase your risk? It does.
Got it. How about those on hormone replacement therapy? Is that an added risk factor if you drink
It's
alcohol?
it such a good question, and thank you for asking that. And I'll refer people to my book, What You Must Know About Women's Hormones, the second edition, because it's almost 500 pages long. So it's a long subject. So when it comes to hormones, there's natural and there's synthetic. And it does matter. There are many studies now in the medical literature. Natural means the same chemical structure that you have when you were born. It doesn't mean it comes from a plant. In this case, it does come from soy or yams, but that's not the definition of natural. Natural is the same chemical structure God gave you when you were born. So, do we want to replace hormones safely? Yes. They should be compounded, which is available worldwide and made for that person, a personalized approach. Estrogen does have literally 400 functions in the body. So it's taste, touch, smell, hearing, skin tone. It lowers cholesterol, blood sugar, blood pressure. It literally is your memory. An article came out only 3 days ago on estrogen equaling memory. So it is a key component. Do I take bioidentical hormones? I do. Estrogen should only be placed on the skin because if you put it in your mouth, it causes inflammation. On your skin, it doesn't. If you put it in your mouth, you can get blood clots. On the skin, it doesn't. And on the skin, it keeps growth hormone, the hormone that keeps you younger, actually higher. It is a fabulous hormone, but it does have to balance with progesterone. Progesterone is the natural, progestin is the synthetic. And this is key. Progesterone studies have shown decreases breast cancer risk. Progestins increase breast cancer. And that's why some women are getting, besides the genes they inherit, that's why some women are getting breast cancer younger because they've been on synthetic hormones for so long. So it's all about balance. You do have to balance estrogen with progesterone. If you're estrogen dominant, you make too much estrogen like I did. That's what my saliva test showed. Without progesterone, would I have probably gone on and had breast cancer by now if I had not looked at methylation and looked at all this? Absolutely, positively. We really can help women worldwide.
Okay. And the hormone replacement therapy, even the one that you apply on your skin, is it okay to drink like one glass of alcohol or even that is too much?
In really, moderation is the key to health. If you're like me and have breast cancer on both sides of your family, you should not drink at all.
Okay.
From the viewpoint of alcohol increasing the risk, it doesn't matter what kind of alcohol, but when you go to the second drink, it increases your risk, depending on the study, 20 to 50%.
Got it. Okay. So why is breast cancer the second leading cause of death? And what type of screening? I mean, you have mentioned the different types of screening, but what is the goal of screening when we do these screening studies?
Breast cancer is a curable disease. And that's one thing everybody should know today. If you catch it early, it is very, 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 very curable. So, the goal in doing screening is to catch the disease process earlier so that we can cure it at almost 100% rate if you catch it in a precancerous state. There's different tests available worldwide. In the United States, there's something called the Gallery test. It has a similar name in Europe and in the UAE, and it looks at precancerous cells. So 0 is a healthy cell, 5 is a cancerous cell, and this is cancer of all types or many types. In between 2, 3, and 4 are precancerous cells. We're about to publish a study showing that if you get rid of toxins in the body, like microplastics and BPA and toxic metals and mycotoxins, all of those, you actually can kill off those precancerous cells in many patients. So a lot is coming up in medicine now that we can help women prevent breast cancer. And if they've had it, very importantly, prevent a reoccurrence. So for those women out there who have already had it, this is not hopeless. You can absolutely prevent a reoccurrence by building your immune system, getting your gut healthy, not having sugar, looking at all of these things, including not having a lot of high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup is a particularly bad kind of sweetener. It is the only kind of sweetener that can get into your cell without a carrier. All the other sugars in the world need a carrier. That carrier is called insulin, which is a hormone. It regulates your blood sugar, but high fructose corn syrup gets into your cells without that carrier. So it does cause an increased risk in some diseases. Again, moderation would be the key to health.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And so, why does having dense breast tissue increase your chances of having breast cancer? And who typically has dense breast tissue? And what would you advise these women?
Many women have a dense breast. There's different reasons why. Some of it may be hormone replacement as to why it's dense. But the trouble with it being dense is you cannot see the tissue well on mammogram. And so those women tend to have a mammogram, an ultrasound, a diagnostic mammogram, and maybe even an MRI just so that we can see it. One of my friends is currently undergoing treatment for stage 4 breast cancer. Fabulous woman, but they didn't find it until it was stage 4. And that's because it was right along the breast wall. It did not show on mammogram. And she discovered she had it when she had a virus called RSV. Her lungs filled up with fluid. When they tapped it, they found the cancer cells.
Wow.
And so the MRI may have looked at that a little bit differently because it has a broader area that you can see.
Yeah. So, what advice would you provide the women with dense breast tissue?
With dense breast tissue, look at everything that you can fix that is modifiable. We didn't talk about exercise today, but exercise, there are studies that show that exercise literally prevents breast cancer. And if you don't like pumping iron, personally, I don't, go take a nice walk around a lake. They even did studies that ballroom dancing and other kinds of dancing are truly exercise. Square dancing, for example, also helps maintain memory. So there's a lot of kinds of exercise you can do if you don't want to pump iron or you don't want to jog or something of that nature. But exercise is another key component that women with dense breasts could do. So eating better, avoiding alcohol, seeing if you are a good methylator or not. All of these things, by decreasing inflammation, really will help those women with dense breast.
Yeah, I was just reading today about 3 miles, a 3 mile walk, or even if you just walk for 30 minutes, like you don't have to be a marathon runner or do like heavy duty exercise or high intensity training to get the benefits of exercise to reduce cancer risk. So that's very encouraging, especially for people who don't like to exercise.
Exactly. And I truly am one of those people, but I walk 3 miles around a lake every single day. And that is good for my mental health. It's good for stress. And it's really great to help prevent cancer.
Yeah. That's great advice. So, what factors commonly affect the ability of the mammogram to detect breast cancer besides the dense breast?
It can be the location of any little tissue that may be there that is precancerous, is certainly one of them. Another one is, do you have cyst? That's one reason why we do ultrasound. There can be a cyst there. And people don't, oh, it could be a cyst, it could not be. Sometimes people have surgery like they may have a breast reduction or they may have a breast lift. And sometimes there's scar tissue that can obstruct that area. What we do not recommend is breast augmentation, meaning putting synthetic breast into the body. That does have silicone, even in the saline breast augmentation. So it's these saline ones are surrounded in silicone. And we do know that breast implants increase BPAs in the body. So they increase your risk of having breast cancer as well. So a lot of things that we can easily do. But if you have breast implants, it also makes it hard on mammography to see what's going on.
Sure. And so there happens to be fewer women in the US dying from breast cancer. Is this because of earlier detection or better treatment options?
I think it's really all of the above. We certainly are finding it earlier because people are more aware. And then we do have great treatment options. Even though I may be a personalized functional medicine doctor and I talk to my patients about diet and exercise and all of this, I believe in traditional medicine just like you do. And so, do I send my patients for treatment? I do. I usually recommend a bilateral mastectomy because commonly the cancer does come back again. I have a patient that I just took on very recently who did not have a reoccurrence for 18 years, but she had had a lumpectomy and she found a lump. So she had a reoccurrence in the right breast. But when they did an MRI, she also had a new cancer in the left. So more and more people are recommending a bilateral mastectomy, unless it's DCIS, the precancerous lesions.
Got it. Yeah, because I've also read that in the developing countries, the rate of cancer is going up. And one of the reasons is because the availability of screening is not as prevalent as it is in the more developed world. So, definitely that screening is playing a huge role in reducing the numbers of deaths, at least. It might even increase detection, but for a good reason, the death rates are going down.
Exactly. And some women are afraid to have a mammogram. You know, please do not be afraid to have any test. Okay. If you're afraid of mammograms, go have a thermogram. A thermogram, because it is a heat wave study. Cancer, usually of the breast, is a heat wave. So it certainly would be a place to start, better than ignoring it and not having any study done at all.
Yeah. So you had mentioned about the MRI. So which type of women would benefit from that type of screening?
Women who have very dense breast that we really can't see on any of the other diagnostic tools. Women who may have a very strong family history that are very worried about all of this. Then there's a question of enhanced versus non, meaning do you give gadolinium, which is a dye, so you can see better? Until we recently looked at TPE, and my group is about to publish the study, we actually now can get rid of gadolinium. Before you couldn't get rid of it all. It stayed in the body for over 100 years, the dye did. We now can actually do therapeutic plasma exchange and get rid of that toxin as well. So we are making great strides now in what we can do to help women. One thing I didn't mention was estrogen breakdown. So I'd like to talk about that for a second, if that's okay.
Of course.
This is a first morning urine study that anybody can do. It's inexpensive. Estrogen breaks down into 2, 4, and 16 hydroxyestrogen. The 2, this is the good one. That's what you want to break down into. This is the one that decreases your risk of breast cancer. You need a little bit of 16 for bone structure. We should probably talk a little bit about osteoporosis, etc. But you need a little bit of 16. Too much increases your risk of breast cancer. And being obese is one way of having too much. Pesticides can give you too much. But what you don't want is the 4-hydroxy. That is the evil one, as I call it to my patients, the good, the bad, and the ugly. That is really evil. That is the one that changes your DNA. It causes mutations. So when I did my estrogen breakdown because of my methylation issues, I broke down almost exclusively into the 4-hydroxy. Again, every woman in the world, this is fixable. We can, if you look at how estrogen is broken down and methylation, we can fix it with some kind of nutrient in every single patient. So it's very, very exciting to look at estrogen breakdown and how we can make it break down into a better form.
So, how do you fix it?
Well, if it's someone like me, I had a problem with a gene called methotetrahydrofolate reductase. I had what that's called a SNP. And if you have that one, I don't make folate, B9, the way it should without methylating it. So I do take a methylated B9 or folate every single day, twice a day. And B vitamins are water soluble, so they leave the body quickly. So all B vitamins should be twice a day, whether they're methylated or not. It is an important test because you don't want to take a methylated vitamin unless you need it. Half the world are normal methylators, like my husband. He's a normal methylator. And so, if you're a normal methylator, if you take methylated vitamins, you can actually get 18 different symptoms that have been studied. And there's an increased risk in every cancer, not just breast, but all cancers. So, it is important to have your practitioner look at methylation, whether you're a poor methylator and fix it, but don't take methylated vitamins if you are a normal methylator. The science is here to help all of us.
All right. That's good to know. So, can you talk a little bit about the harms of mammogram and how can we protect against these?
We are honestly no longer looking at mammography every single year unless you find a lump, because we do believe radiation directly to the breast does increase your risk of breast cancer. So, the American Cancer Society and most of the cancer societies worldwide do recommend mammogram either every other year or, if you have a normal mammogram, the next year a normal, and then after that, every 3 years, depending on whether you find a lump. Really, in all honesty, the first thing you need to do is self breast examination. Go ahead and examine your own breast. Do not leave that up to your doctor or other practitioner. You usually are the one that will find the lump.
Yeah, so with the change in the guidelines from doing the mammogram after the age of 40 to having shared decision making with your patients, and then pushing that age back based on risk factors and family history. I think some of that came about because of how much mental distress some of the women were having with, some false identification and things like that. So, I think there is something to be said about that too. And so, yeah, shared decision making, talking to your doctor about are you the best candidate and what age, the mammogram needs to start.
I agree. And I don't think people talk to their doctors enough about this. It is something you should discuss with your healthcare provider because the answer, really honestly, is probably different for everyone.
Yeah. So, thank you, Dr. Smith. You've shared a lot of useful information with our audience. Can you tell us if there's anything else you'd like to share before we conclude this podcast?
Absolutely. And that is be a healthy weight. And it does matter what the weight is. What does that mean? That means having a healthy weight. After I turned 65, I did put on 4 pounds because otherwise wrinkles show. It all starts sagging, it all starts hanging. So I needed just a little bit more. I still wear what an American would call a size 4. Now it's just kind of generous size 4 because you want to be a healthy weight. But if you're obese, that is a big issue. And that leaves us with the important hormone insulin that I mentioned earlier. Insulin is key to whether you get breast cancer or not. In the studies in the US, 80% of people have insulin resistance, meaning insulin does not work effectively in the body. That is something that you can totally fix at any age. We now see obese children. When I was a child, there were no obese children. We had one in our high school, and that was it. Everybody else of the 600 people in my high school were very, very thin. And people with insulin resistance increase their risk of all cancers, including breast. In fact, my personal stats are the following, because I do a lot of cancer work in my practice. I've only had one patient, one in my whole career, that had a normal fasting insulin at the time of diagnosis of any kind of cancer, of any. And I'm not going to give you what perfect numbers are because they vary around the world. The way you measure it is different in the United States versus Canada versus the UAE, et cetera. But you want to have optimal levels of your blood sugar, hemoglobin A1C, which is a marker of your blood sugar of the last 90 days, and the hormone insulin itself. You want them to be perfect and not just normal, because that decreases your risk as well.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Smith. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. And we will definitely look forward to reading your new book, which I will put in my show notes for anyone who's interested in reading Dr. Smith's book, which I highly recommend, especially when you're talking about preventing breast cancer, or if you've had breast cancer, how do you prevent it from coming back? So she has some very valuable insight and tips from years of work that she's done. So thank you, Dr. Smith. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to having you in future events.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here.